Today we're going to be looking at how to use tempera paint cakes to make value bars, gradation, and then gradation on our shapes to make forms. This will have a similar feeling to how you do it with coloring things in with colored pencils or crayons, except we're going to be doing this with paint. You're definitely going to want a pointy brush for this project. And then we're going to be using the tempera paint cakes. So to use those, you would dip up some of the water and you're going to drop it on like that, and then you're going to stir gently. You don't want to flatten out your brush and lose your point. You want to keep it up on the point while you stir until it turns into a paint. And then we're going to start nice and dark and heavy. So it's not dark enough. I want that a little thicker when I put it on, so I add a little bit more paint to it. And we want to stay inside those lines as much as possible. When you're working with a pointed brush, you can move sideways and you can pull down. Don't ever go up against the brush. It's going to make it splatter and splay out. And then those bristles don't like to go back together into a pointy brush again. You're going to have trouble getting down into these little corners if you don't keep your brush nice and sharp. Okay, so there is that part. Then I'm going to come over to the next one. I rinsed my brush out. I'm just going to add a little bit of water. I'm going to do that for the first couple. And so these ones kind of match. I'm trying to keep it as dark as the gray. And if you have trouble with this, you can always use black paint to try and match it out a little bit better. Rinse my brush, and then I'm going to wipe it on the edge of the cup. Okay, and you can still see it still has some paint in it while I'm wiping. That's okay. I'm trying to dry it off a little bit so that I can smooth it out a little bit here. While I'm smoothing it out here, I'm picking up a little bit of the paint and moving it over here into this one. If it's not dark enough, I can go back, grab some more paint out of my paint tray, and add it to it. Now when you're working with these, it's a little bit more difficult. And I added water to this one a little bit to get the squares, added water, dried my brush, came down. So now I'm not even adding paint anymore. I'm just rinsing my brush out a little better each time, drying it on the edge of my cup, and then coming over and dragging the color that's in there down a little bit further until I get to the end where I'm barely touching them to get some more color in. Okay, so we're looking to have that gradation. Now, it's a lot easier when you do it on just the gradation bar because you don't have to worry about chunking it, and you can get it a lot smoother. I have some bristles coming out. I'm gonna pull those out of the way. You can get a lot smoother in here because you can just add in the heavy paint first. And then I like to drag it this way a little bit to move the color. Rinse my brush out, wipe it on the edge of my cup, go into it, add a little bit of water, rinse my brush out some more, wipe it on the edge of the cup, add a little bit more water, same thing, rinse my brush out, edge of the cup, add a little bit of water till it gets down to about there, and it has that nice gradation all the way over. And then we're going to apply this gradation to these forms down here so that they look more 3D and realistic. I'm going to go in with my point, and I'm going to add the color in the darkest over here where I need it. Rinse my brush out completely this time, wipe it on the edge of the cup, and I'm going to come in, I'm going to scrub just a little bit, dry my brush off again, and this time I'm going to dry it on paper towel before I go back in and do a little scrubby, scrubby, and then dry it off. I'm going to go back and actually pick up some of this paint because it's getting a little too spread out, and then dry it off on my paper towel. There we go. Next one would be our sphere over here. So I'm going to pull that color around. Oops, I got a piece of paintbrush there. Rinse the brush off completely, wipe it on the edge of the cup, come back in, do a little bit of scratching with it. Gently though, because this is paper, we don't want it to tear. Okay. Rinse my brush off completely, dry it off on the towel this time, go back over, pick up some of that water, dry it on the towel, pick up some of that water, dry it on the towel. Now I'm going to do my cube. Remember, this side's the darkest side because it's the opposite side of where the sun is shining from up there. I'm going to come down, trying to keep my strokes the same direction as much as possible. So I get down here to the end, and then I'm going to pull across. So after I get all of this part here done, I'm gonna come over here and I'm just gonna do it that little bit lighter. Remember, we don't want it as heavy as the other side. I might come back in with a little bit more across the bottom, like that. And then add just the white water part up here and then go back in and dry that out so that this all has a little bit of color, but not too much. There we go. If you want to do some really dark shadows, I always pick up a little bit of that fuchsia color and then a little bit of blue, so you get a nice purple. And you can add in the cast shadows that would go underneath. Kind of here. There we go. And then if you wanted to, if you're really careful on that edge, you can add just a little bit of extra dark. But you don't want to go crazy with it, too overboard. And I rinse it, dry it off, and then I can tap it to blend it a little bit. And then I dry it off, same thing here, tap it to blend it. Tap it to blend it. There we go. Just like that. Now it's going to go on the drying rack. Keep your book open since these will be inside your book to dry.